This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome back to another episode of the Working Class Fishing Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brian, and here is Mr. John Morris with our sponsors.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Working Class Fishing. And this episode is brought to you by Lid Rig 317 Flies. That's our new sponsor. That's Justin Carnes. Go check him out. He's out of Indiana. He's tying musky bugs, pike bugs, trout, smallmouth, you name it. He's whipping them up, and they're absolutely gorgeous, and they catch a lot of fish, which is the most important part. So go check him out. We've got Max and Outfitters. And Brian, who am I missing?
Good question. I wasn't even thinking about it.
We'll get back to it at the end.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have a script in front of me, but
you don't have that guy anymore anyway.
Yeah, exactly. He's gone. Well, if you don't recognize that voice and you live under a rock, and you're going to crawl out from under your rock for a little bit here for the next hour, because who we have with us today is a author. He's also an instructor and a guide, and he's a legend in the fly fishing community. And he's going to probably be like, okay, well, that was a bunch of bullshit. But if you don't recognize his voice, that's your own fault, because we have Mr. Kelly Galloup with us today. This is a huge moment in the history of the Working Class Fishing Podcast. I know it's big for me. It's huge for John, Mr. Streamer guy. And we just want to say, Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time this evening to come on and talk to us.
Hey, my pleasure, man. Can't wait.
Awesome. So
yeah. I was just going to say I had to put my shrine away so it wasn't all creepy.
John, go get that really quick.
He's seen it. So
okay.
The picture of you, praying as the meat Messiah.
Yeah.
Craig actually made that, and I guess that was up in your shop for a while. But...
Yeah, one of my managers, Chris, he's always surfing that shit and finding it, and that thing literally was behind me filming for almost a month. I never looked back there. Shit, and somebody I commented on a YouTube thing, and I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? And I saw it, and there was this thing that they had been there for a long time. Then he just redid it at somebody else. And now it's Chuck Norris with two dungeons coming out of the pistol. I can't.
Yeah.
I walk in, and there's right beside it's a picture of Bill Devane flipping everybody off. So I just look at it.
Right on.
What you really got to see is the Shaved Merkin Award above it. Yeah, that one's even better. From the East Rosebud Fly guys. It's I'll show you when. I'll take a picture and send it sometime.
Oh, please do. We got to see that.
Dude, so Kelly, really just thanks for coming on, man. And I'm sure everyone knows the story of Kelly Galloup, but I've got a question because I've heard about it twice. How is the Abaco thing going?
I sold it.
No shit.
Yeah. What a genius. I bought it. I was going to buy it a while back, but my neighbor and I bought it. And the first year we got hit with the Dorian, which sat there. It didn't hit us. It was actually 60 miles from us. And then the next 2 years were COVID. And then somebody else wanted it. So it was really a blast. It's a super fun place. It was a blast, but it really takes, when you offshore lodges, takes somebody to be working them all the time. So it should close in the next week. And so 11's bought it. So it'll be really cool because they're gonna really dial it up. It's a really unique piece of property on the end of the island. So it's gone.
Well, damn.
Yes.
But did you get to do some fishing up there before?
Not before I bought it. I'd never been to Abaco, but then while I was there, but really not much either then because we were locked out for 2 years.
No,
yeah.
Shit.
If you want to look at investments, just call me. I'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah. I gotta say, I was doing all my homework and research, right, and doing all this stuff, and I read a lot of different things about what you had been doing and what you have done and everything. you started like in Michigan as a teenager. And of course, this is going over like every other 150 podcasts you've been on. But, what was intriguing to me, you were fishing like the Great Lakes trips, right?
Yeah.
Did you go after those steelhead?
That's all I did for a long time. I mean, not only, I mean, everywhere, but it's kind of how I got started, really. The whole streamer game's pretty new. When I started, you're talking in the 70s, right? And the selective trout strategies written by Doug Swisher and Carl Richards, those guys were from Michigan. And all that shit was done there, right? So I started out, my first trip, like when I was 15, were trout trips, and everything was really dry fly. Everything was dry fly. And then when I got a little bit older, I started, I think I caught my first steelhead when I was 7 or 8. They've been in the Great Lakes forever. People didn't know it. My dad was actually a guide in 1940. He was the first guide on the PM. And I asked him once why, because my grandparents have the headwaters of the Pere Marquette, which is the birthplace of the brown trout and all that. And I asked him, I said, how the hell could you not, because people didn't fish steelhead until the 60s, really. And I asked him, how the hell could you not have known these things were here? And he said, well, dumbass, we had a thing called a job. And, and basically Michigan was a clear cut, it was a climax pine forest. And they clear cut it, and there weren't many trees in the 40s and stuff, so everything was running dirty. But at any rate, I started guiding steelhead when I was probably 16, and then that got the bug for the West Coast and all that, and BC, and decades of that stuff too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the reason why I ask about the steelhead is because that's like the fish I love to fish for, being in the Pacific Northwest. And you named off BC, which has some of the mega fish up there,
Oh man, I was a total junkie.
Yeah.
I was a total junkie.
Yeah, I love it. And I just wondered, about what time you got into them, and then kind of that transition, because it's just something, like you said, or like your dad said, it'll literally draw you away from your job. That fish will take you away from your job.
It'll take you away from a lot of things. I've been married and engaged a lot.
A lot of marriages have ended because of that. I believe that there's a lot of articles that begin with, like, if you're going to fish for this fish, you better have a good divorce attorney.
Yeah, there's a buddy of mine up there. He's from your neck of the woods. He and two of those guys, the first guys in on the Dean, they fixed winged in to the Dean before anybody was around, right? And then hiked to their shit. He wrote it in his marital contract that he was going 3 weeks to the Dean, no matter, hell or high water, babies, and get whatever, doesn't matter. And they're hardcore, dude. It was something. I started boycotting though. When they changed those laws around, it pissed me off, so I boycotted. But I'd probably still go back. One of my best friends still has a place on Mike Craig, who is one of the first, if you read Trey Combs' book, Mike's in there. Mike's who I fish BC with always and forever. He's got a place on the Bulkley, and it drives me crazy. He's like, are you coming up? I'm still pissed off.
Well, there's your bit of marital advice right there. Put it into the contract. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, shit. So you're pretty, do you still keep up with like BASS and MLF and everything?
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Dude, what do you think about them going to the 5-fish format?
I didn't like it. Did you?
Honestly, I think I as the guy that watches, I like seeing them smoke a bunch of fish.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, I liked all the original amount of the rules, I liked all the stuff. It was fun because I'm doing the same thing. I'm watching it. I mean, I haven't fished for bass and essentially for 20 years since I moved out here, but I'm still a junkie. And I'm watching like you. I want to see them smoke fish. I want to see the techniques. I want to see what they're doing, hear what they're doing. And I like seeing a lot of repetitive, I'm a slow learner. I like to see it more than once.
Dude, like the one that got me, not recently, but the one that like kind of got me hooked on watching it for a while. Now I must be honest here. I haven't kept up with it as religiously. I got lost to the fly fishing world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm slowly getting back to keeping up with that stuff again. I've got some friends that are
You can
like
do both. You can do both. You won't turn to a pillar of salt.
Dude, but what it was watching Takahiro Omori. He just dude, he's a beast. Like
unreal.
And he was just cranking them, just absolutely just off this isolated point. And he was just cranking them off this shelf, and he won that tournament. And I watched that on YouTube like 4 or 5 times. It's like 2.5, 3 hours long.
Yeah.
But it was awesome, dude.
I follow I don't follow them hardcore. I mean, I watch them. It's just as much as I can. It's about the only thing I've ever recorded in my life is so I can see them, because I'm usually working. So I don't know if somebody asked me once, I used to tell people that I was a bass guy, and it was just kind of, especially with the fly dudes in the old days, it's not like that anymore. The kids, the new guys, they don't give a shit. They'll fish fly, they'll fish spin. They don't care what they're doing. But I told everybody, everything I've ever done in the streamer world's come from bass fishing. The reason I wrote the book was Larry Nixon walking the dog. I was watching him walking the dog, and he said, he says, we do this when they're set up in dower, meaning they're set up deep from temperature. And he said it's a reactionary bite. They can't help themselves. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm on this, and then I went and tied up a stick bait and went to the Boardman River and tried it. And I really couldn't do it. It was kind of small river, kind of fast. And especially where I was at, which is right by Mayfield Pond, which is the birthplace of the Adams fly. But and it's a little river, but I was trying to walk the dog, which, I could do with a bait caster, but I couldn't because of the current. And I just started ripping on that thing, trying to do weird shit. And my biggest fish for a long time in the middle of the day, a mid upper 20s fish ate it. And that's why we're talking. I mean, it's all just walking the dog. And by the way, back to the Bahamas, if I have my way, I take a stick bait and I top water barracuda all day.
Man, that sounds like fun.
Give me a 5 or 7 inch spook, and I could be happy as a pig in shit forever. I got bit by one last time I was down there.
Shit.
Yeah, I got a picture. I'll show it to you. It was I was out walking in front of the lodge. Let's see if I can find this picture. I was walking in front of the lodge, killing time, waiting for Kip, my partner in the business, and he was in, I don't know what the hell he was doing, and I was out there, and it's a little tiny when he's like, 3-footer or some shit, and I got him on a spook, and he comes in, and I'm standing on shore, and I stepped in, and the son of a bitch rolled over on his side, looked, gave me that big stupid horse eye, right? Looked at me and fucking air launched and just lit onto or something. Lit onto my leg.
Dude, that is brutal. Did you like punch that thing back for biting you?
I had that son of a bitch so fast around the head. And as soon as I grabbed him right by the operculum, by the gills there, and I squeezed him and he let go. And I was worried about the freaking plugs. I wasn't worried about him so much. And I grabbed him and then he threw the plug and it came out kind of half-assed in my leg and half there. And I grabbed him and I looked him in the face and I said, go tell your friends, punk. And I let him go. Sure he died. But yeah, it was pretty cool. But yeah, the bass things, that's ingrained. I love it.
So I have a question. So the jerk strip, right? As us fly dudes know, that you kind of father that into the fly world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got two like technique questions that have like been burning, but
Mhm.
I've been trying to figure it out and not fucking ask people, but
Mm-hmm.
you're the guy. So how far is too far moving my rod tip for the jerk strip? Because if I'm running a jerk bait, I'm walloping it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm moving that rod. I'm fishing a medium rod with a fast tip,
Mhm.
and I'm getting it to dive. And because I fish floating jerk baits, so I really it's pretty big motion to try to get it to dive. But with the jerk strip, with these neutrally buoyant flies that are in that like I don't know, like 12-inch range of depth,
Mm-hmm.
how far is too far for my rod tip movement?
It's a little bit indicative of what kind of rod, how far your fly is, how heavy the fly is, but there's no such thing. It's like if you're working a suspension bait, neutral buoyancy bait, and you want you're kicking it too. It's all what you like the looks of. And so I like to see as a whole, as a general principle, as a general rule, I like to see 3-4 inch movements a foot. I'd rather see a lot of little stuff, but some of the baits that I run, or flies, that I run, like the flatliner, for example, I hit that thing with a 3-foot jerk, and then I let it suspend, and then I hit it with it's made to go wham and do this big kick, right? So I hit it with probably a 3-foot long jerk. I wait till it stops and gets so it's barely hovering, and then I hit it with 3 small, 3-4 inch movements. But as a whole, I would say if you're moving your rod, and unlike a jerk bait or any other with a bait caster or a spinning rod, you are the reel. And so if you go too far, there's too much time. You're screwing around trying to get back to your fly to keep the cadence going. So if you go much more than say 18 inches or so, you're probably going to get out of control a little bit. But it's all what you like the looks of. It really, you watch Johnny can shimmer baits. He moves his rod back and forth really fast. He does a single pull, usually about a foot and a half, I'd say. And then he goes into shimmers, so he blends them up. But I don't think there's a set distance. It's what I tell everybody, don't worry about anything but looking at your fly. Just like when you first start fishing a crank, anything you can see, you watch it, right? Not everybody can tell what it's doing by feel. So go to a bright fly that you can see, give it a big crack, just hard as you can do it, see how much your fly really moved. You don't want it to go tubular on you and just do long straight runs, right? You want it to be kicking. You're building all that shit into your fly on purpose. And so too much of a run will tubular your fly, take all the shit you built into your fly, it'll pull it down tight and you won't see it. And so, and too little, thing will just sit around, at the mercy of the current. So somewhere in between, I would say 12, 18 inches pushing.
Yeah, see, and you brought it up too, because I was getting to where I was no longer able to strip set into my fish because I was cracking it like I was about to, swinging for the fences. It was way too far out and kind of unwieldy, but I didn't know, pretty much. That was my first dubbing.
Started a corn-fed cow. Holy shit. Yeah, that's the problem is when you go to the jerk strip, the key to that thing is when you gain control over it, you can go fast or slow. I've told this story in a lot of seminars. I was doing a seminar with Shaw Grigsby one time, and we're walking down the hallway. For people that don't know Shaw, you think about the fact that guy's in his 60s still competing. I don't know, I haven't seen him lately much, but still competing. That's an astounding thing for anybody to keep going in that sport. So hard. But I asked him once because it seemed like that was back in the day of just BASS, right? And it was the top 15 out of millions of anglers. The top 15 out of the top 50 were always those guys, the same guys. And that's just not possible. You don't get to just go in, right? You got you've got to earn your way in every year, unless you win it. And then I said to him, what's the difference between the top 15 and everybody else? And his comment, without a second's hesitation, was it's their ability to move their lure with their rod and not their reel. And so you, as a fly angler, your hand becomes the reel, right? So the more you can do with your rod and less, that's you implementing the movement to the fly, and not so much that's kind of the difference between just stripping, because, just a strip is just a mono movement. It tubulars your fly. It doesn't let it breathe and do things. But when you kick it and kick it, kick it, you're getting a lot of that movement, just like a jerk bait or suspension, a lot of baits where you're hitting them and then kicking them again.
Yeah, and it keeps you from being a dope with a rope, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
I get a lot of shit, I get a lot of shit from the spay guys about that, because I said, you just can't do this. It's just not a good technique. And they think anything that goes in the water and it's on a long line is a streamer. And they're pissed off because I said, you can't animate your fly. Well, you can pump your rod, and all that can do is bring it in, but the current's against the fly, and you pump your rod, it'll pick it back and it'll breathe going back, but it's not swimming sideways, right? Because the techniques that we do, we don't swing flies tail first. We do perpendicular to the flow, and we do lots and lots of movement, which, I've swung lots of flies for, decades, but it's not the same. Once you get that thought that you're doing lots of little movement, you'll quit moving the rod quite so long.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask. So jigging flies.
Mm-hmm.
So I fish tons of Ned rigs, tons of just pretty much every jig you can think of. Mm-hmm. And I understand what the strike feels like on conventional gear. But an issue I'm personally having is I can see the strike from my line, but I'm not tied on it. And I don't know if that's a bow in my line. Well, clearly one for being inexperienced, but I don't know if it's a bow in my line because I'm fishing a sink tip instead of a full sink. I don't know if I should be fishing like just a floating line, because these are just size 2, like super heavy crawdads that I've been tying.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like really finesse shit for largemouth and smallmouth.
Are you jig fishing them, or are you more or less Carolina them, or how are you doing? You're talking about flies, right?
Yeah, flies. Yeah.
So go ahead.
So I'm just having, is there a way to keep that line tight and keep that contact as
are we in a river or a lake?
Let's just say a lake, because that's what I fish mostly around here is lakes.
I tell people mostly to think of it just like fishing a worm. You're going to get the eat on the drop, and the more contact you have, the better you're going to be off. You can't jerk the rod, just like you watch a beginner fisherman with a rubber worm, right? You're out worm fishing, and they'll crack those things so hard, and they just let it free fall, and they miss all their eats because they're eating it. They're on the way down. They're not under tension. Same thing when you jerk or vertical jig one, it's the same thing. And I actually find it easier for me on a sinking line, because when I pick up on a floating line, it's my leader that's dropping, right? And you don't get quite the same effect as you do with a mono or braid or whatever, but it's the same thing. You're gonna be on the drop most of the time. Quite frankly, if you're jigging in a river, it's the same thing.
Okay.
But it's tough. It's not as easy. Things don't sink as quick. You got more pause time on your descent. A lot of things slow down because you're not static to that thing. Your line's sinking. Your flies are kind of hovering above it. And as you pick it up, it doesn't necessarily jig it like it does a jig, because there's a lot of shit between you and that fly.
Yeah.
And a lot of room for push bites. People don't understand that on streamer. You can have a full-on wide open brown trout coming at you 30 miles an hour and do push eats where they push at your bait, and you don't feel a damn thing. If you can't see it in your line, and the difference between great, bass anglers and everybody else is their ability to see the lines move, feel things that don't happen, you know, they're having to make this up in their brain, like, why'd my line go stack? You know, it's the same thing with a fly eat. One of the biggest on the white one year, I had a gal down there fishing with me, and this was a 29.5-inch brown, push ate her fly. I screamed so loud that scared her because there was no pull on her line. I mean, it came at it from right, it was really slow water, push that son of a bitch forward. And I watched her line buckle like this. I'm like, what? You can't do that. It's not possible. And you can make that happen. And she got it. I mean, ate that thing down the gullet, man. But it's a pushy. It's the same thing. When you get in slow water, you get a lot of that descending eat where they don't necessarily, like a bass will tip head down and eat something, but that's when you're getting right on the bottom. Trout don't tend to do that so much. They come up from below it and eat it as it starts its descent, or they crash it, and then it's so easy. You know, if they hit it going sideways, nobody's going to miss that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get a lot of visual eats jigging on the river where I just see the mouth, you know.
Right.
What is this, damn Humane Society?
Yeah, he's
got
got.
another one.
You heard of the crazy cat lady, right?
Is this the sponsor we missed?
Oh, the HSUS. Right. Well,
Shit.
while we're talking about jigging with that and everything else, I'm thinking about coho salmon and twitching jigs, right? Now we have a couple different things we can do to speed up that sink. What have you found as far as terminal tackle on that jigging that will assist with, you know, because we're talking about that line drop in the water and the bow and the jig physically sinking slower than the tip of the line. Let's say we're using a shooting head or a sink tip or something. What could a person do to actually increase that jig fall rate, especially for something like a coho or a reactive strike type fish?
I end up kind of Carolina rigging them, where I do twist on 16 inches above my flies, and sometimes doubles. I put 2 on, and mostly because I don't get because it's weighted at that point and it's sinking. I don't get that dead feel. That empty feel with, you know, when only your jig's dropping. And I use pretty short leaders too, so I'm a little bit more in contact. And that's the only thing I've ever found that really, most people want to go to floaters on them, and I find it harder yet, because I get that dead zone between the line and the leader, and one's up here, one's dropping here. If you pick it up and now you got a mid zone where this isn't following it, your line's not following it, but with a sinking line. And then if I put on the twist, and I usually use one full twist on, and I do them 16 inches apart. And, you know, I don't know what a twist on weighs, maybe like a 3-shot. I don't know. I have no idea. I've never weighed one actually, but, you know, maybe a BB, I don't know. But it does give you a little bit more feel on it.
Well, and the reason why I asked that also is you know, we know jig flies work good, you know, as fly anglers. We know that they're very effective, especially like you said, that push or even that reactionary strike, depending on the species you're going after. Something that's picking up popularity out here in the West is actually trout twitching, which Bill Herzog, he's designed some flies around, or I shouldn't say flies, jigs for conventional tackle. But I'm wondering, because of the subtle movement, because we're talking about a sculpin mimicking pattern with that twitcher, basically for that, the way it's tied and everything else, the gill appearance, the head, everything, you know, getting more of that subtle, like, you know, upstream cast, working back down, you know, how to enhance that. But I didn't think about a twist on to actually help sink that. Right.
And you can do, I mean, sometimes on my jigs, because I've got a handful of, like the Nancy P. Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah.
That's a crayfish pattern, and it's the same thing. It's made for that subtle movement. And especially around here or rivers out your way, you know, Metolius and some of the, you know, there's a bunch of them actually out there they got the riffle effect that we do here. And sometimes I'll just throw a 3/16 tungsten bead right on the knot at the head. And when I'm, especially for upstream jigging, and I do really short, my upstream techniques are seldom do I cast more than 30 feet. I mean, I'm usually a 30-foot cast on my upstream. And on this river, we do that a ton because you aren't getting in the middle of the son of a bitch and fishing back. Very few places you're doing that.
Mhm.
And so I don't like to swing fly's tail first at the fish. And so I do a lot upstream, and I'll drop a 3/16 tungsten. I use a loop knot, push it over, it doesn't move. And I tend to fish pretty shallow anyway. And probably, I would say a 10-foot retrieve would be a pretty long, when you lose control, because you don't have a, 42-inch retrieve per revolution of your handle, you got yourself, right?
Mhm.
And so I tend to go 20 to 30-foot cast upstream and retrieve 8 to 10, 12 feet max. And so that gets me in contact with that. It's just so, especially when you come from the swing world or traditional world like I did. I grew up, my dad was a guide a long time ago, and dry fly fishing's new to this world. And I mean, I started fishing in the 60s and 70s hard, but you were swinging wet flies is the beginning. And so nothing could be further than from that, where you get to feel everything, than to going upstream and doing a jig retrieve, right?
Mhm.
Super easy, not super easy, but easy with a spinning rod or a bait caster. I've never bait cast upstream on a spinning rod. I do a lot, but contact is everything. I mean, just like any gear fishing, I mean, it's everything, right? And
Right.
anglers who are really used to swinging or kind of wet fly swinging, or like traditionals. When I say that, I don't mean steelhead style. I mean like traditional, like partridge and orange or something like that. Or if you're nymph anglers, especially bobber people, they're used to seeing or feeling something. You throw something upstream and all hell breaks loose. I mean, and you'll see this super fast movement shit, and it shouldn't be it should be slow.
Oh, it's so subtle. It's so subtle and slow.
But the only way to eliminate it is to fish short. And
yeah.
Well, if you got a slower river, you can get away, but really you don't. You don't get that much. In reality, even on a slow river, 30 feet's a long fucking cast. I mean, that's a lot of line to manage and control and jig. And even on a floating line, when you can see it, that's a lot of shit. And by the way, I fish floaters mostly upstream because I seldom fish, and I tend to fish a lot of crayfish stuff upstream. And the other stuff is, when I do that, when I'm fishing crayfish, I seldom put the line, the twist on. I tend to be more Carolina rig style, when I fish upstream, where I'm burning stuff from short 10, 12-foot movements. And I might pull in 16 inches above that, but I'm still going to only retrieve probably 12 feet. Given that the river's slow enough, and that's the dictating factor there, is if the river's slow enough, I'll probably get in the middle of some bitch and fish back to the edge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you aren't getting in the middle of the fucking Madison. It's not going to happen. So
I'd try it once.
Yeah, I've been out there too, and then back down there.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah, it's like shit. But yeah, it's more, everything's control, and it's. You come off of the fly fishing world where everything was dry fly, and it's real easy. Now you drop, it's easy to see your line, what's happening. Obviously, you're fishing surface stuff. That's a whole different world than trying to go down where they live and make something act like where they live, right? And so I just go, I preach it constantly. Matter of fact, it's my mantra for all fly fishing. Stock more, cast less, including steelhead, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many fish on the Dean I caught in 12 inches of water at daylight, when everybody goes through that son of a bitch is on the other side of the river. Especially when the two-hander world came out, it opened up the whole inside of that river to me. Like, hallelujah. I can do my 40-foot cast right there. But I just think it's really imperative that unless you have a style of fishing where you can, churn and burn and just throw stuff, but we can't really do that.
No, you
have
have to work everything.
Yeah, you got to work it, and you just stock more, cast less. Including your two-hand. You watch the cats that are superstars at the two-handing world. They're all doing their superstar cast, but every one of them starts out real tight. You know, fish the water that's there, miss nothing. And in the fly world, man, you're asking a lot of a fish and a lot of this shit to make them eat it. And thinking just because it's one of the biggest misnomers in our industry, streamer in particular, just because you got a big goddamn fly and you throw it out there, something's going to find it. Well, they're not idiots. They're going to find something. You can throw a crankbait or you know, people are always coming into my shop saying, oh, there's some of these fucking gearheads down there fishing spinners. I said, well, how are they doing it? They're throwing it downstream. I said, don't worry about them. They're going to catch a fish in their life. You know, a good spinner angler throws upstream and gets 12 blade rotations a foot. You say that to some motherfucker and they're like, what the hell's our blade rotation? And it's like, well, it means you got to control the goddamn lure. And a fly is no different. The fly is still, you have to control it. And so, or a swing, you know, look at a really good spay guy. They can control it, or especially dry world. You're starting to control your V, right? And how much wake you've got. And you watch the people that get that, they catch fish like crazy. And then and then streamer world, it kind of got dumbed down to shit. I mean, they just like get a big fly and throw it out there. Well, and they don't catch shit. Everybody gets the village idiot once in a while, right? And they think they can write a fucking book because they caught one fish. Duplicate the damn thing, right?
Yeah, do it twice.
How do you think Kevin Van Dam won, 5 national? I mean, Jesus, you're duplicating things, right?
Yeah.
It's what it's about. It's control.
KVD was so fucking successful because he moved and he covered water. Dr. Frankenstein, as you called him once upon a time. Like he's a beast, and it wasn't a fluke, it's like you said, it's that feedback, man. And feedback is the whole thing. A refusal is feedback, not it's just fuck, man. It's like the bass guys, they've got it, they've honestly got it down, man. Like I can't talk shit on that at all, and I don't know why you would. But
they've had it down for a long time. I mean, the difference is they fish for money, you know, and real money. And if we fished for money, you wouldn't have guys throwing 60 feet and hoping the son of a bitch back to them. They'd be fishing, and now that we've got the whole, everybody's getting into this Eurotrash stuff, and everybody's checking, and they're getting there, and they're out there, and they're catching every fucking fish in the river. And they're suddenly starting to realize, I'm not throwing, I'm rod lengthening, and I'm catching the living shit out of fish, right? Well,
literally at your feet.
Yeah, all of a sudden, as somebody said to me the other day, do you get, because, and I go out and I'll do it every once in a while here just for fun. He says, do you get tired catching every fish? I says, sometimes, not really. And then I go back. I think it's a soulless way to fish, but I think it also is a great tool to get people started. And it also tells them, it's like going to a fucking fish pond, right? With a kid. Go to a bluegill pond, start a kid fishing. Don't take them out dry fly fishing. Take them out. You can take them dry fly fishing for bluegills. Let them catch a bunch of fish. Let them have fun, right? And understand it's a perfect learning tool, bluegill is. You can beat them on the rise. You can beat the hook set. You can do a lot of shit. They pull like crazy. Yeah, it's great. But you'll start to realize you don't have to throw 60 feet to catch a trout. Yeah. You might want to diagnose the water in front of you, learn to read the goddamn thing so you can see where they should be. And like you said, the feedback of not seeing a fish and seeing a fish, where did it come from? Yeah. We kind of lost that for a while, but it's coming back. The new kids they're incredible. These 18, 24-year-old kids nowadays are better than, they hear it all, seen it all, been there, done it, right? And they learn very quickly. And you're seeing a lot more of this controlled angling than you are just that huck it and hope thing.
So do you ever, I watched a video about your full sink. So the Streamer Max short is not yours.
It is not mine. I do not
But
like
the
that.
long is yours.
That is mine.
Okay. I was watching the video on like the roll cast pickup and how to cast the full sinking line before I bought it and all that stuff. I had a question. Do you ever like kayak fish or anything like that? Or are you mostly a walk and wade guy now?
Boats, not kayaks.
Okay.
I mean, drift boats. It is a commercial.
Yeah.
You know, the first hex hatch, the first hex nymph I ever tied was the guy who was very influential to my life and got me into guiding, I tied before I knew him, but his name's Tom Noams. He's a general tackle guy too. But he had a cat and it was called Bamboo. And we shaved that thing for a hex. It had the perfect tones. And that son of a bitch, that thing died. And I says, tell me you shaved the cat. Tell me you shaved the goddamn cat. And he didn't. I'm like, are you shitting me? Oh, Barb would kill me. And I'm like, she didn't have to know. I mean, just like a couple flame strips down that thing would have been unbelievable. Like a lifetime of dubbing.
Oh, God. You know, I told John when he told me he was tying flies out of cat hair, I was like, dude, you're going to be running around the neighborhood with like a pair of those cordless clippers, like shaving the cat. Like, there's some gray, there's some black, you know. It's like, this stuff's better than marabou, you know. There's cats with reverse mohawks up their ass and everything else.
It can be good. It's a good blend with other stuff too. It's really, I mean, blend it with some Salmo, some longer fiber synthetics. It's you'll see it. It's got some good.
So
I used to shave I didn't shave them. The roadkill. I always wanted to meet the DOT guy in Michigan because I'd see a roadkill. I'd get out and I'd rump patch it, take its ass rump because it's really good white hair for deer, and I'd cut its belly if I had time. If it was good hair. I always wanted to meet the DOT because he had to found hundreds of these things where its ass patch is missing. What the fuck? There's some freak out here. There's some satanic group doing weird shit to the deer.
That poor bastard probably thought it was like some kind of ritual.
Yeah, he's looking around. Where the hell? Where are they?
Yeah. Out there, it's foggy and cold, you know, and he's picking up this thing with no ass
I'm not
hair
picking
on.
up the deer anymore.
Yeah. I quit. You can't make me do it. Yeah.
Son of Sam. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
But that actually is like a perfect segue for something I wrote down. So I was talking to Russ Madden, right? And Russ has nothing but good shit to say about you. He wouldn't even give me a good funny story. But
I got something on him. That's about a couple of his 3-day Johns. Never mind. Yeah, so Russ is like he's the only little brother I ever had. And he's a great guy. Incredible talent.
No, dude, he's so talented, and he's been so like patient and open with knowledge and mentorship, and he's a class act for sure. But something he told me is that you're one hell of a taxidermist.
Used to be, kind of.
Dude, he said, this was a story. He said your freezer went out, and he had like this, I don't know, I don't remember the exact number. It was like almost 30-pound fucking trout or some shit. He said it was a disaster. He said, but you fixed it. And he sent me a picture of it, and it looked fucking awesome. Like, how?
Was that brown trout?
Yeah, dude, off of the...
Yeah, that was a labor of love in a fucking gas mask.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God, was that ugly. If it wasn't him, it wouldn't be on the wall, I can assure you.
Man. Oh, I could only imagine. How long had it been out of the freezer, though?
I don't know. I had one worse. I found almost identical. It's about a 30-pounder we found in the river here. It had been dead for 10 days floating around.
Ooh.
And I went and found that one. It was 38.5 by 24.5, just shy of, and just a giant. And somebody had gutted it to see what was in its stomach. Guts were all in there still. And it was pretty warm out, and I went downstream. I thought it was going to be this little everybody kept talking about it, and I thought it was going to be, 25 incher. I took this little 13-pound bag with me. I saw that son of a bitch from 50 yards away and went, it looked like a big Lake Michigan brown trout, and
Wow.
it was staggering, but it had a stink that it was right there with that one of Russ's. I had one worse. I had a duck freezer. I love doing ducks. I only did fish and birds. I love doing birds, but I couldn't get mature birds in Michigan very often. Hold on a second.
Meanwhile, while Kelly goes and chases his dog. No, that's good.
There's but this I bought my birds by the pair by people who raised them, and I had this garage door, 16-foot garage door, and every time I'd open, I'd get this little whiff of something like fishy or something. I wasn't sure what it was. And one day I walked in the side door, and my buddy Todd Sampson said, "Wow, something smells fishy." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" And I looked over at my freezer, and it's not on.
Oh no!
And it's got 63 pairs of ducks in it. And I cracked the door just to see, like, maybe I'm just praying that the light was off because it burned out. And I cracked it and I closed that son of a bitch, and I said, and it oozed this gray shit come out the bottom. Dude, I just said, holy shit. And we opened the doors, and you couldn't breathe in there. And we duct taped the son of a bitch shut, right? And we get it in my truck. I take it to the landfill. It's illegal to put it in there. The door has to come off. I said, no, dude, you don't understand. We cannot take this fucking door off. I said, and it's windy as shit. And we're on the mound, right? He's got the bulldozer there. And they said, you got to open the door. Because we got to make sure there's not a dead body in this thing, right? It's Northern Michigan. It's not freaking Seattle. This is 30 years ago. And so I go, dude, you don't get it. And he's in his bulldozer. And I don't know if it was Russ. It might have been Russ and I. And I think it was actually. And we get there and we take the tape off, and the wind's blowing 30 right at the bulldozer. So he can look in it.
You asked for it.
We open that fucking door. And and we're behind it, and we got masks and shit on. And all of a sudden you can see him going, tip it out, tip it out, tip it out. And he told me for months, you sound like I did it on purpose. I said, dude, those things are like $200 a pair. I didn't do it on purpose. Yeah. And oh my God, it was the most disgusting thing ever. Back to fishing. So yes, I do.
It's all a part of fishing, right? Who hasn't had their freezer go out, whether you have a power outage or the thing just goes out, man? Oh.
Usually I got them packed, I don't know. I really don't do it much since I got out here. So, but I did a lot back in Michigan. It's how I kept my fly shops alive before guiding in taxidermy, before fly fishing was cool. You better have a second income if you have a fly shop.
So my question for you is because you were guiding steelhead, trout, doing all that stuff. You came out to Montana, everything else. Something that I guess I never even bothered to look up, and maybe it's just be weird for me to look up, and maybe it's a weird question, but what is your favorite type of watercraft for a river? Are you a drift boat guy? Are you a raft guy? What do you like?
I'm inherently lazy, so I like jet sleds, but
okay. All right. You want a jet sled?
Yeah, I have several.
Oh, okay.
I like running drag line off. I like to fish alone. I don't mind fishing with Russ, and Johnny, but that's about it. And so, she'll never listen to it, but I take my girlfriend too, but only because she can row. And maybe better than me. She can back a freaking boat better into it. She can back a trailer better than I can. It really is demasculating. But at any rate, it's indicative of the water, really. If I'm like, I love the Big Hole. It's one of my favorite rivers in the world, but it's always skinnier and shit, right? And I got a raft, and I absolutely. My two favorite sounds in the world, the red-tailed hawk and the paddle dipping into the water and on oar. And so I like both of them, but if it's all indicative of the water. I don't think I could do, I've got a drift boat, a raft, and 2 jet sleds and a bass boat. So,
Is it a glitter boat, or are you running
No.
like
white trash, bass tracker.
Nice.
hell yeah.
It's an 18-foot. I love that thing. It's got more.
That's
it's
a big
got more
fucking boat,
mileage.
dude.
Huh?
That's a
That
big
thing is-
fucking boat.
It's perfect for having. Hold on, I gotta get my hound dogs barking again. It's almost as bad as your cat.
Oh, the dog wants in now.
She's a piece of shit. She's like, she's gonna go to the other door and start whining.
Yeah, well, once my wife gets home, you're going to hear like an eruption of dogs. It's going to come through the garage wall, because it's like, oh, mom's home. They go ballistic. And then I'm in there, I'm chasing them around, I'm like, shut up, and go over there, grab them, No.
Yeah, I've got 2 morons that are just sitting there. They do it just to bug me. I can tell.
They just whine and yap and all that.
Yeah, wait until I'm not doing something or I'm doing something and then be a pain in the ass, but
well,
can't shoot 'em.
So you got the bass tracker. You say you have several jet sleds.
Only 2 now.
2.
Only
Okay.
2. I've got a fish right from your neck of the woods, and I've got one of those. Actually, a buddy of mine, Bill Boynton, who I used to work with at Shell Oil a long time ago, he was a fish right dealer, and Ray Schmidt and him designed the power drifter for Michigan. That's where that boat came from. He was a big dealer back there. And I've got one of those. And then I've got one of the Shawnee Supremes that's from the Arkansas, which is just a tits boat for the Missouri and the Yellowstone and stuff like that. It's long but shit, you can take off in 3 inches of water wide open. They're so long and pretty heavy, but they're skinny, right? And money.
Now, as far as your drift boat goes, you run in fiberglass or aluminum?
Fiberglass. Placket.
Oh, we can be friends.
I worked for Bruce.
Okay.
I designed the fly pod.
Oh, you did? Okay.
That's my boat. Yeah.
I have a WF-16. So if you're
Number 1
familiar.
boat.
What's that?
It's the number 1 boat ever.
Yeah.
You can't really improve that boat.
Yeah.
Unless you get a fly pod, then you have ultimate storage. So you can when you have 26 fly boxes you have to put in there.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk to Bruce, and they're right down the road from where I live here, and so they have their plant like, I don't know, 3 miles away where they shoot the fiberglass and do the molds and all that stuff. But I've always been curious. I see a mix, especially out here, of aluminum and fiberglass. But just to talk to the fly guys, it seems like everybody's running a clacka, or they might be running a hide, but for the most part it seems like the clacka craft's where it's at.
Yeah, the LP16 is just like that is just the workhorse of the industry. Everything else is kind of just trying to catch up, as far as I'm concerned. In my boat, the fly pod is just, all I did with this, I took the 16, moved everything forward 14 inches and put dry storage on both sides of the gunnel. So I've got 5-foot bins on each side, just because I literally carry 16 bugger, the big thing, 26 of those big cases. And I feel naked when I go with 20. So I had to have a boat.
Really load that bitch up. Yeah.
Thank God they're not crankbaits. The motherfucker would sink.
Oh shit, man.
Dave, what's your favorite color crankbait?
They tend to have, kind of like my flies, they tend to be things, silvers and yellows, so, accents of yellows. Depends on, it's so hard because it's all following that color, that daylight color. And I that's why all my fly series have, at least 5 colors in all of them. But on my crankbaits, silvers with yellow and blues, but I don't know if I could have one. I mean, with all the new stuff and it's so hard. I mean, but I really tend towards the brighter shit on my crankbaits because I'm usually reactionary stuff and fast, chartreuses, hot blues and stuff like that. I do a lot more soft plastic stuff though. You know, jig swim baits and
No, I used to make the absolute shit out of soft plastics.
oh my gosh. If you took a 3.5-inch flat tail jig on this river with a 1/8 ounce jig, I swear to God, you could wipe the fucker out. Every fish,
Wow.
every single fish will at least look at it. Every single fish. I don't give a shit. You can go up to I take a 5-inch Strike King, same thing. It's that smoke with that yellow stripe. And holy shit. I mean, whenever my friends or my family show up and they're like, and they're all fucking old, right? And they all want to learn to fly fish. I'm like, no, you had 40 years to learn to do this shit. You're too fucking old. I'm not teaching. Here's your spinning rod. I've got a shit ton of size 2 MEP spinners with single hooks. And I got a shit ton of 1/8 ounce, sometimes 3/16 ounce jigs. I hook them up with the soft plastic. I just throw the son of a bitch out there. I don't care where it lands, just reel it. I don't care if you jig it. I don't care if you reel it. I don't care if you drag it. You'll catch a fish. And they just wipe it out, right? And so, and then I don't work with friends or family with multi-hook crankbaits ever. It's spinners or jigs. I mean, that's just all there is. Debarbed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Safer way to go for sure. I mean, for a lot of people, we've been switching out to single points now instead of trebles, even, going with the Siwash and all that.
You know, that back in Michigan, I had a lot of friends that were commercial anglers, that they're running charter boats. And those guys started when the salmon, it was an incredible industry. You should read about it sometime. 1969 to 70. It was the first $1 billion industry ever developed in a year. And it was all the fish, sport fish became the biggest seller of boats in the world. All this shit just happened. Lures, depth finders were found, downriggers were invented, all in the same Grand Traverse Bay, right? Everything happened right where I happened to be. And these guys would go out, catch their limit, and come back, right? And they're trying to, I bet you 25, 30 years ago, those guys switched to single hooks and said that they just didn't, their fish didn't come off.
Yeah.
Because they get a hook and, trebles can get wedged and they start torquing and spinning and death rolling and shit and they're popping them out. And they swore, all my buddies swore, go to the single hook. It's in, it's done, it's over. They did a lot of spoon fishing too. And they were always on the spoons, but they went to a lot of their cranks too. When there weren't so many guys throwing back then, but a lot of guys trolled and even on flatfish, I saw guys going to it, which was unheard of.
Yeah.
They just said they just land their fish.
Well, a lot of people are starting to use the bead chain swivel with the single Siwash from under the belly of the actual, whether it's the flatfish style or just the crank style, they're going to that because when the fish comes up, and they crash that lure, whether they're trolling or anchor fishing or whatever you want to call it, they hook up so much better. Like you'll get a bottom jaw punch on a big Chinook, which they had they got a super hard mouth, but you get that razor sharp Siwash into them and it'll punch right through. They're not coming off.
And that's what those guys, Chinook are what those guys were fit. They put cohos in the Great Lakes, early, but they immediately went and put the Chinook in because everybody wanted to catch a bigger fish, right? So suddenly you go from 2 or 3 lake trout trollers to 60 boats in a harbor, all fishing for Chinook. And the faster they can get their 5 and come home, the more trips they get to do, right? And so they were looking at that, and it makes total sense to me. I don't know. I do it for my own safety, but more than anything. And everybody always talking about the treble hook. Fly guys are always worried about treble hooks tearing the fish up. I never saw that. They usually got 1 hook in them anyway, if you're lucky, 2 at max. And
I've skin hooked so many more fish on treble hooks than I ever have on a single point hook. Yeah,
me too. But I don't try to argue with them. They think the same thing about 2 hooks on my flies. And when I first started doing the articulated thing, in particular, I heard about it from the coast, and they're brainer hooks, they call them. They're gonna hook them in the brain. I'm like, do you have anything about the physiology of a fucking fish? It's not going to it's not going to brain the damn thing. Hold on a second. I'm going to lose you. Why is my computer not working?
Because it's a
Helps
computer.
to plug it in. When I moved it, I didn't plug it in. There, we have battery again. But yeah, the people would always say that they would brain that this back hook somehow was going to go from the jaw, flip around, and somehow go through the top of their head and put the hole through. I have snagged more fish in the brain area, dry fly fishing, than I have ever. I have never hooked a fish up here. I don't know how they thought it was going to go to the top of the head, somehow pull and go straight down through and brain the son of a bitch. But I heard it constantly. I mean, the first 5 years, I mean, I was the turd in the punch bowl when that first started. Boy, people were, the dry guys were, there was just a lot of pushback, you know. And one of the big ones was hearing about the brainer hooks, and they're not too worried. I mean, and on that, if I'm cutting hooks, I cut the back. I don't give a shit about that back hook. That's purely insurance policy. If he happens to go through and not hook, and maybe the back one hooks him, they eat the front of the fly. They don't eat the back. They're not squid eaters, trout, or they eat the head. They have no way. You know, I've talked about this in seminars for years. Trout, and why I don't swing flies at tail first at fish. Steelhead or squid eaters, there's a difference. Trout have to ambush and they have to hit sideways. They have to eat the head. They cannot eat it from the tail. They got spiny dorsals. They got things that stop them, and they don't have hands. They can't put the damn thing in their mouth. They eat it. They grab that thing and they hold on to it. And most of the time they kill it and let it go and then eat it. They don't. If you think about it, T-boning a fish, if he's got a 10-inch fish across his mouth, how the hell is he going to get that down his throat? He can't, especially in a river. Water's pushing against him, right? What the hell's if he opens up and lets go? It's not like it's going to bend in half and go down his stomach. He's either got to let it go or he's got to have it by the head. And even then, if he's got it by the head, think of how he would get it with all that pressure pushing the rest of it backwards. How the fuck's he going to get it in his mouth? Right?
Yeah.
And so I don't really, and I think they just always hit the front end. I mean, we catch them in the back. You hear that shit about their short striking. That is such bullshit. You're feeling them tap it. They're hitting it to stun it. They're doing something. Real fish don't tap the ass of anything. Be like getting in the ring, walking up and slapping you in the butt. I mean, you hit it the head to stun it. You want it done. You want it done. And so I kind of, that whole thing's kind of gone away though in the last 10 years. The whole brainer hook and, you know, the back hooks, they're blinding the fish. I've blinded a lot of fish dry fly. I've caught 3 fish steelhead dry fly fish, and I've caught 2 on the Dean and 1 on the bulk. They're both hooked in the top of the head.
The steelhead coming up to eat that dry.
Right,
yeah.
right dead in the head.
Man.
I mean, they've swam away just fine and brained them.
Yeah. Well, I think it takes a pretty incredible set of circumstances because fish are smart, but their brain is that big. I mean, if you catch and keep a fish, cut into its head and look at its brain size. They're, I mean, it's like trying to shoot an gnat at 1,000 yards. Yeah. It's not very big. They're smart, but it's not a very big target to hit.
Yeah. And I tell people it's a blood sport. It is. Give it up. You can't protect everything. I keep them wet and all that stuff. That's great. Blah, blah, blah. Then they'll tell you that lakes were populated by ospreys dropping fish. Are you shitting me? I mean, you do what you can do. And at some point shit happens, and it's very rare. I don't remember the last time I killed a fish, and it's just what it happens. So you got to get past the fact that we can't solve every fucking problem. Yeah. And that actually, if the hook bothers you, just cut it off. Cut that back hook off.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
Well, I
have friends that don't fish hooks. I mean, Scotty, Scotty Hall, a lot of these guys don't. I mean, they're past it. I have friends that do it with dry flies. Whatever, good for you. I like to catch them.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what you do.
We We got a buddy, his name is Marty, and he said, if I wanted to go stare at the water, I'd go look at a mud puddle in my backyard, but he's out there to fucking catch fish.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, and we've talked about this before. I mean, not with you, obviously, but if you have a problem with, hurting something, fishing might not be the thing for you. You might go take up pillow fighting or something else instead, because, despite the fact we hook the fish, we land it, we let it go, or, if you want to keep it and whack it, you keep it and whack it and eat it. But, you're rolling the dice in a lot of ways. Now that dice chance of you killing a fish is pretty low, unless you skid it up on the bank and beat the shit out of it and do all that stuff. Then it's going to probably die, or you gill grab it or whatever else. But if you're doing everything right, they're going to swim away, be happy, and you guys are both going to shake hands and part ways.
Yep. I mean, it is. It's, you just got to, at some point, you just got to give up that there's something, there's a chance in everything. Driving down the road, you hit a lot of fucking bugs,
Yeah.
And you run over gophers, and you run over deer, and life just happens. We can't stop. And, the whole, I found it curious that there's about 5 years ago, I was reading this thing about PETA, and their new number one target market was fly anglers. And the
You
quote,
gotta be shitting me.
no, I'm not sure if it's ever changed. It may still be, but the quote was, and I don't remember if it was what it was in, but the quote was, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember the actual quote, but it was, we are affluent white males as a whole, we are affluent white males who practice selective cruelty by practicing a thing called catch and release, where we torture the fish, let it go so we can torture it again. It was,
That's par for the course. I mean,
I got a headache.
Well, I'm just saying, you can look it up. It was.
No, I'm not saying that you didn't, that sounds.
I mean, to get the quote right so you can puke in your mouth again.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Well, what drives the logic of some of these people that think about this? And I'm all about conservation and, fair chase, everything else, but come on. I mean, these are the same people that are saying, oh, you shouldn't breed, your pets. I mean, you shouldn't be able to have responsible animal husbandry on a farm. I mean, what kind of lunatic? I mean, I'm not going to give up eating meat. Okay. Whatever your agenda is, that's fine. But, and yeah, there's some people that do some fucked up stuff to animals too. I'm not denying that either, but
we should be able to hunt those people too, but we can't.
Exactly. We don't have that right. Like, I mean, will PETA go to court and say, hey, we can have like the purge on, perverts and these other people? I mean, I'm down for that. I'll agree with you on that, but,
I'm listening.
It just blows my mind. I'm sorry that I have to go off on this side tangent with Kelly here, but it blows my absolute ever living mind that there would be that type of focus on that. But then again, we got weird shit happening all over the place where people are like, well, we should just get rid of hunting and fishing and trapping and, responsible animal husbandry. And
I saw two commercials when I was eating dinner tonight on anti-tramping.
Unbelievable.
It's over and over and over and over, but that's been going on for a long time. I didn't know it was going to come to our world though.
Yeah, it only took a matter of time, but yeah. So you got a new building too that you've been working on. Maybe you want to share with everybody about that.
It's in Ennis. Yeah, we originally moved, which is 42 miles from here. We're up in the mountain up here, right? And we're moving to Ennis. We're probably, we're not getting rid of this one, obviously. We're adding that. Originally it was for our internet business, because that's kind of, we're so far out. One employee is really tough because we're 42 miles, and generally it's, males that work here, and 42 miles from the closest female, it's really hard on them. And so, and well, that was a funny play on words, but we lose a lot of shipping days too. And so we decided to move the internet business down there. And then we decided, out of the hell with it, we'll just put up a mega store. And so we're building a really big place so we can basically we're going to do all our internet off the floor instead of warehousing everything like we do now. So we'll pick off the floor. So we'll have a really big shop down there. And then most of it just gives us the internet business. We get 2 extra days of shipping. Out here, I'm so far out that I can't do next day ever. I can't do anything like that. And so we'll get Saturdays now too. We lose Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on shipping. So if it's big days, we drive it in for Saturdays, but that's kind of a pain in the ass. So we're moving down there. Hopefully we poured floors last week. It was great. Started out at 5 below. Great day to throw concrete. And so did get up to 30 though. And so hopefully we'll have that rolling here. We hope to move product in by the end of January. So
very cool.
We'll see.
Very excited.
It'll be a fun. It's get Kelly off the water even more. No.
No way. That's what you have employees for.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I had a meeting about that this morning. We'll see how it goes.
Nice.
That's what Johnny, I'm always picking on Johnny in my videos and shit. And everybody says, why do you, in the beginning, it's because he's the guy that's probably going to take over for me. But in the beginning, it was just because I says, why don't you get behind the camera now and then and tie something or do something besides me. And so he just wouldn't do it, right? He was awful behind the camera. He's so stiff. And people would say, why do you pick on this? Especially when I'd be out speaking. This is like 10, 15 years ago in particular. About 12 years ago, I guess, when I started picking on him. And they're like, why do you pick on this Johnny? I says, well, he's this little short, sickly guy. And he says, he makes Barney Fife look like a badass. I say, he won't stick up for himself. And people be like, well, that's kind of mean. I said, whatever. And then they'd come in and Johnny's 6'4", about 230, looks like a brick shit house, right? And he's tall, dark, and handsome. And they walk in and they'd look at me and go, you liar. And I'm like, his name. Now he's got a whole following. Every time I give him shit, somebody writes in, why don't you shut up and let Johnny talk, you piece of shit. Now I'm the bad guy. And I'm like, winner. Now he's got a following so I can let him do stuff.
God.
Fun stuff.
Oh man. Well, we're coming up on the hour here, Kelly, and actually we're beyond the hour. It's fine. It's totally fine. I don't care. Man, how can people get a hold of you? Obviously, if they're listening to this, they're like, God, Brian, why do you ask all these stupid questions? But I'm talking about the people that are like, who's Kelly Galloup? There's still people out there, right?
But the ones that haven't been offended yet and haven't turned us off.
Yeah. That's okay.
Slidein.com. I mean, if they look up my name, it'll just, and it's Galloup. And no, it's not Galloup. It's Galloup. There's no P in French. And everybody says that when they call, hey, Mr. Galloup. But anything that says my name or slide-in.com, that'll all get there. And
Two ends.
Did I tell you that story about the guy the lady that called? And she was pissed.
Go for it.
She called in and she asked, because you look up slide in as one word. I mean, did you not learn to spell? But I mean, if you look it up, slide in as in slide, you get a whole lot of other stuff than the slide in lodge. And so she called and she's kind of pissed. And I said, I knew what had happened. And I said, did you put 2 N's in it? And there's this pause and she goes, oh my God. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Back in the day when I was still in Michigan, we had the 1-800-FISH, right? and I think it was 1-800-FLY FISH. I can't remember what it was. This was like way back. This is 30 years ago. And I'd never even heard of an 888 number. But if you called 1-800-FLY FISH, you got me. If you called 888 and you just put I can't remember, it was 3474 is the last three. I can't remember what the other ones were. You got America's hottest sex line.
Oh shit.
Man,
those used to be 1-900 numbers.
It was the first 888. And then it took you to the 900s.
Okay.
And we got more people calling, bitch. I'd never heard of an 800 numbers were new. Were not giant corporations having them, right? You're talking back early 80s or mid 80s. Websites were just coming out. There was only a handful of us that had websites. And then to have an 800 number, I never heard of an 888, but I had plenty of people call and ask me if it was if I thought it was funny that they did that, or, it's kind of like my fly names. They act like I'm going to pervert the entire fucking world because of a fly name. And I'm like, dude, it's an 800 number. What are you talking about? I'm paying for this number. What are you talking about? And then they tell me that he dialed 888. Good luck with that, which it also tells me you're surfing for something else. So.
Yeah.
You just got busted, asshole. Yeah.
Oh my God.
What do you do?
But
yeah,
that's awesome.
Anyway, if they go to Slide In or Kelly Galloup, they'll find me somehow.
Awesome.
There's lots of ways.
And your books are not available on that Forbidden Word.
No.
But you can get them from your shop. And I've got them sitting over here. And
a lot of fly shops carry all my books, and just not that A word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they don't. I think right now, books, everybody said books were going to go away. I don't think they have. It's been, I'm glad to see Brian finally put something on this hook.
Yeah.
Is that cat? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. went down and shaved Garfield and put that one on.
Yeah, the books are available through us, or in a lot of fly shops carry them.
Yeah. Our local fly shops have all your books too and everything else. The website's awesome. When I went on there, I was looking around. You guys have done an incredible job with the building of that website and the ease of access and everything else. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a new development. It's just basically coming out. It's going to get a major overhaul here in the 2 weeks. It's right now on a proto site. Okay. And then the new one's going to be even easier.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Be exciting. Jon, do you have?
Huh?
Say again.
You got, yeah. No, you got anything left? Hey, before we cut Kelly off, you got anything else?
Yeah. Dude, just really thanks so much for coming on, man. I know it probably don't mean shit to you, but
it means a lot to me. I'm going to come back. This was more fun than usual. Talking shit's just my game.
Yeah. No, we can do this anytime at all.
Yeah. It was an absolute pleasure. Thanks for answering my questions. Especially on the jerk strip. Now I don't feel like I was all fucked up. I mean, I was all fucked up, but no, I understand.
No, it's cool. And like I said, if you want to do it again and techniques, have people, you got questions, I'll do it anytime.
Oh, yeah,
I love it. I got to talk bass fishing from what somebody understood what I was saying.
That was the goal.
Jerk bait. What the hell is a jerk bait?
Yeah. Well, this was all premeditated, just to let you know. I mean, in all honesty, we were like, we're not going to talk about trout and shit. We're going to talk about
that's
bass
fine
and bass fishing. But
if you think about, that's why the jerk strip. That's where that word comes from, and it was mostly because I was watching Larry Nixon walking the dog, and that's when he started, and he was running some jerk baits. And I thought that jerk's got to be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
People that know me say, God, you're so lucky you got a retrieve named after you. So,
awesome. Well, cool. Kelly, Thank you so much, man. What a pleasure to have you on. We really appreciate it. You know, we will have you back on now that you've said like, hey, I'll come back on. What we'll do next time is we'll find more shit talking stories. Number one. So we'll go dig through the history of Kelly Galloup and we'll figure something out. But
it was the 70s. I needed the money.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll dream up some more wild technique stuff that none of the other podcasters ask you. I listened to one podcast with you and the guy's like, oh, the blonde flowing, you know, golden locks going down. And you're like, what the fuck was that? I was like, this guy is it. That's it. This guy's it. He's the man.
That was
That
was a good one.
Yeah.
That was Matt's podcast.
Yeah, Matt's, yeah.
I've heard some shit that just it's all good with me.
Yeah.
I'm a perfect politician because I really don't care.
Well, we'll go talk shit anyways. So
cool.
But Jon, you want to run through the sponsors and I'll take us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me make sure I don't fuck this up this time. This episode of Working Class Fishing was brought to you by 317 Flies, Max and Outfitters, Lid Rig, Angry Rooster Fly Company, and Morris Fly Co. Go check out our sponsors. They've got a lot of discount codes for you, help you save money. If you got any questions, they'll be down in the show notes. If you want to get a hold of Brian or myself, you can do that through workingclassfish@gmail. You can do it through our Instagram, Facebook, all those other social media platforms. Feel free to reach out and give us a holler, and we'll get back to you. And Kelly, just thanks again for coming on, man.
My pleasure, man. Talk to you guys.
All right. You got them all from Jon. Once again, thank you so much for listening. Tell your friends about this podcast also. They're not going to want to miss it. So thank you. Hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks, guys.